I still harp on the little details. Do we, and in our world, details are important.
Yes.
You miss a detail, that could cost.
And it's communication about detail.
Huge.
Green light. That's a payday.
Welcome to my first episode of the PayDay Podcast, where I get to be the host. And today I have an awesome guest. I want to tell a story about this guest. I can remember this was maybe, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember the exact timing, but there was a roofing company in Columbus, and we were needing help to get this company to move over to our payroll-related solution at the company I used to work at, and we needed a good health broker to bring in. So we brought in Jamie Charlton at Saxon, and I had already done my part in the first meeting. So it was one of those sales meetings where I got to just really sit back, watch somebody else do their thing, and also look at how the prospect was responding. And it was one of those moments where I saw this person kill it, and they killed it and got this person, answered all their questions. They were a subject matter expert in their field. They were likable. They built rapport immediately. And to be honest, they were a big reason we ended up closing that deal. So I think really highly of this person. That's why I had to have him on here when I wanted to do an episode on benefits and healthcare. So how we doing today, Jamie?
Good, Matt. Thanks for having me. Appreciate that story.
Awesome. So we've known each other a while. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, 2008, the federal government passes ACA Obamacare, and the entire world acts like health insurance is going to evaporate and go away. Health insurance brokers are starting to run, especially from small businesses, yet you didn't do that.
Yeah.
So tell me how you led to becoming one of the fastest growing small business brokers in this market during a time where everybody else was running away from doing what you do.
Yeah, you bet. So as you mentioned, 08, we're coming out of the recession, then 10, they passed the ACA, and we decided, we've always been a firm as a small business ourselves. We've always been a big supporter of small businesses, and that's, the great relationship you and I have formed working with that market segment, that small to mid-sized business. And we threw our cards on the table and said, hey, you know what, we're going to learn this ACA inside and out, and we're going to roll with it and make sure these small businesses have that support that a lot of them don't have. A lot of small businesses don't have 10 levels of HR.
Yep.
They don't, or even an HR person. It's usually you walk in and it's, an owner's spouse that's running HR and payroll and compliance, or it's a sibling or a next of kin or something. Whatever you want to call that person.
Yep.
So we're there to support that person. So when ACA happens, all these companies are going, what the hell do we do? We still need benefits. We don't want this because our rates are going to go up. And the cool thing about Ohio is, they created, I think the ACA was the best thing that happened to small and mid-sized businesses from a benefit standpoint, because a lot of things got creative. The industry had to get really creative. And so we said, hey, we're in. And so a lot of our competitions that we're getting out of this market, we stayed in, and the rest is history, as they say. We learned it really well. We know how to navigate that market. We know the products inside and out that these businesses need. When I say businesses too, when I say small business, we're talking 50 employees and under. And then when you go to 51 to 99, that's the next segment of business, and you have 100 plus. So the ACA really segmented the industry more than it was in the past. So you have that 2 to 50 employee size group, 51 plus, and then 99, or 51 to 99 and 99 plus. So we threw our cards on the table, said, hey, we're going to learn this 2 to 100 space really well, and here we are.
So the entire industry had some new innovative things happening. Yeah. Are you referring to the creation of the Ohio MIWAs? Is that what comes to mind?
You got it. So yeah, I always laugh at the industry because, we helped write this law. As soon as it got passed, we're poking holes in it to figure out that it wasn't as good as we thought it was going to be. So to your point, that's how MIWAs got created. So MIWAs are a self-insured group. It's, the only way you can underwrite in the ACA world is to have a self-insured platform. In the under 50 space, I'm talking about.
Yep.
So in the under 50 space, all these carriers that the ACA was going to be a good thing figured out, hey, they're going to lose a lot of good business because these employer groups just weren't going to take that 30% increase just because they couldn't underwrite anymore. So MIWAs got formed. We went to level funded plans in that 2 to 50 space. So a lot of new opportunities came about for that 2 to 50 size business that weren't there before ACA. And that's why I say ACA was actually a good thing for that small to mid-sized business because it gave them a lot more choices than what they had prior to ACA getting passed.
So the ACA had some positive things for businesses who really just want to offer a good group health benefit to their employees. I can remember earlier in my career, the small business health insurance area, there was almost too many products that made it a little bit intimidating to figure out, like, is this a real health insurance product, or is this like in the when I worked in the restaurant industry, we were offered these mini med packages, and I used to tell my coworkers, that's not your deductible, that's your out-of-pocket max. And they didn't know what that meant. People just, it's hard to understand. Yeah. So they're, you know, so I do feel, I do get what you're saying. Like I felt like you guys just embraced it, and you're pretty honest with the business owners. Like, this is how you do this. Yeah. You got to almost be willing to look at each MIWA every couple of years and figure out which one of them is wanting your business this time around, if you happen to have a bigger renewal and you're in a position to shop it aggressively. So you guys do a really good job with that. How do you feel you differentiate from some of the other small business health brokers in our market?
That's a great question. So a couple ways, and you alluded to one of them. There's so much confusion out there. You've got to educate people. You know, everybody wants to, you know, again, going back to the exchange, everybody thought the exchange was going to be the answer. Well, when's the last time you went on the exchange and shopped for health insurance and knew what out-of-pocket was, knew what deductible was, knew what copay was, what level you're getting, knew what network you had? Yep. The American public doesn't do that. They rely on their employer to do that. Those employers are wearing multiple hats. So what we do is we go in and educate. So every time I hire a new client, I have 2 rules. One, we shop them every year. So even if they get a 2% increase, we're going to at least take a look at the market, make sure that's still the best opportunity. And if it's not, at least that employer knows it's not, and he or she can decide to stay with that carrier or move to a new carrier. The other one is employee education. We always have an open enrollment meeting, whether it's a 3-person company or a 1,000-person company. We'll go on site and meet with those people. Nowadays with Zoom and Teams and all that, maybe that employer chooses to do it that way. But either way, we tell that employer we're going to be on site. So we're big on education. We have a full service team to again, take care of that 2-person company up to our 1,000-person companies that work to make sure that those employees are taken care of. We're very hands-on with our team, with our clients for a reason. And you bring that up. People don't understand it. What's a claim look like? What's an explanation of benefits? You know, do I owe this provider? Do I not owe that provider? I'm in an HSA. How do I shop HSAs? Where's the transparency tools? So we're very big on that. And then I think we're going to do this a little bit later, but when COVID hit, you know, technology really became a big player in this space. Before COVID hit, a lot of these employers wanted hands-on, paper. Yep. Well, the nice thing, and again, we'll get to that in a minute, but COVID really changed the game for us as well when technology came to the forefront.
Yeah, speaking of COVID, we felt that in payroll as well. Everybody was trying to figure out how to do everything in a more paperless way. And so you guys have been embracing that for a while. So you were prepared for this big, this as demand exponentially increased for businesses to move their open enrollment to more of a paperless process, because you guys are big with this software called Employee Navigator. And I'm familiar with Employee Navigator and payroll because it's such a popular, easy system that brokers can provide to small businesses free of charge. And my system actually integrates with it. So they've done a good job of building integrations with a lot of payroll companies so that we can get the deduction data fed right into my system. So there's no manual work with new hires who have deductions starting when they become eligible, or with the big company open enrollment. So it is a pretty cool, seamless process. The other thing, I've told you this before, I almost told you, like, you guys need to sell this about yourselves more, is you guys do a wonderful job with Navigator at owning the carrier connection piece. So this is, you know, after open enrollment, everybody's picked the right plans for their family, but now usually there's anywhere from 2 to 5 different carriers, and you got to get all that data over to those carriers very quickly. And Navigator just is really revolutionized how that's done, in the entire health insurance world. And you guys were early in creating a whole team around Navigator to make it work. So, what's been the challenge as your predominant role is the health broker, the salesperson. You bring in a lot of the new clients, but I know you're also a big part of your team back at Saxon who is running the Navigator piece. How is, just as you guys have evolved into Navigator the last 5 to 10 years, how has that changed what you guys do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, every crisis there, you can either take the downward view or the upward view. So COVID, again, kind of like the ACA we talked about earlier, COVID was an opportunity for us to get in here because we couldn't go see people. So what do? Do you just shut people off and say, hey, here's your renewal, take it. Sorry, Matt, call us when COVID's done, we go see you again?
Yeah.
Because, I'm like you, we like to go see people.
Yep.
Well, we couldn't see people, not by choice, but just because of the rules. So we finally got our clients who were pushing this technology off and off. We say, hey, we have no choice. And people are like, where has this been for the last 10 years? I said, we've had it. You just didn't want to adapt it. And now, to your point, it's just an easy button. So we can integrate with our payroll partners. We can integrate with the carriers. And so now that HR person at that company, all he or she has to do is send a link out to a new hire and say, hey, Bob Smith, go in and pick your benefits. Bob Smith's done in 30 seconds. Comes right to our team. Our team takes care of it with the carriers. It's seamless transition. You guys pick it up on the paycheck, so it makes it easy. They get term. Bob Smith terms. HR goes in, hits term button. Bob Smith's out of the system. So not only does it help with administrative onboarding, but it also takes away from, and I know you've been in this position where you walk into a group and they finally audit their bill because they have time to sit down because they're looking at it and they see that Sally's been on the bill for a year. And they've been paying for Sally for a year, and Sally hasn't worked for them for a year. And they just lost how many thousands of dollars on Sally's premium. Well, this takes away that audit headache as well. So, it's always started big, and it's working its way down. And to your point, we've been a big advocate of bringing these direct feeds from the carriers down to the carrier, or in group size to the carriers. There's a cost to it. I understand that, the cost reward, but there's so much opportunity in a small group that these carriers want, to your point, that they're now bringing it down. So this direct feed is getting better and better and better. So it's almost becoming a very seamless process. But the good news about us at Saxon is we have a full team behind that. So if our clients ever do run into a problem, they call us directly local. They don't have to call a technology company or a carrier to be put on hold for 4 hours. They can talk to us directly and we'll help them fix that.
That's great. I know my wife works with you guys personally. I've been working at home at the same time as her, and I hear her on the phone with Carrie, and I've met Jake on your team. You guys do a really great job. And for folks out there who are like, maybe they have 20, 30 employees, and it's that one person who wears 20 hats. They don't have an HR person like my wife's company does. So they're just really scared and they get confused. And, like people like us, sometimes we go off in our payroll and health insurance tangents, and these people, I just don't want to deal with it. Yep. So tell me a little bit more about how you guys help kind of act as that benefit administrator. It's a something that HR consultants can sometimes do. What do you guys do for literally no charge? And at what point would you bring in some of your HR partners, because that's a little too much? Because I know you do more than most brokers, but I'd like to better understand what is your cutoff when they need to bring somebody else on.
So we do everything benefits. So HR, everybody thinks when you say benefits, it's HR. Yep. So HR is this big globe. We do one piece of that pie. And that's benefits. So we don't, you got workers' comp out there. You've got OSHA compliance, for example.
My wife would always tell me that, Matt, workers' comp is not that a big part of HR at all. And I used to, because that's what I used to do. Yeah. So I agree with you there. Yeah.
So you got, your compliance, other outside EEOC, Fair Labor Standard Act, yada, yada, yada. We can go on with all the acronyms. That's HR. So if they have questions about that, we have HR partners that we'll bring in and say, hey, we need this help with Fair Labor Standard Act, for example, or discrimination. So that's where we cut off. So we're very specific to our lane. We work with specialists, payroll. There's a lot of brokers that think they can do payroll. I don't want to do payroll. I don't want to know taxes in Hawaii. I don't want taxes in Washington. I know benefits in those states. I don't want to know that. So we're very in our lane when it comes to compliance for benefits, when it comes to the ACA, when it comes to benefit types of things, and we embrace technology and people together to do that. I have a wonderful team. So if our clients get stuck and need a person, they call us. If they want technology, we have that solution. But we stay in our lane when it comes to benefits because that's what we're good at. And the way the world is going, everything is getting so specific and so detail-oriented. If you're going to be a generalist, good luck.
Yep.
You know, you may be able to pass the buck for a while, but sooner or later, you're going to get stuck. And I don't ever put my clients in that position. Handbooks. I love the story about handbooks. Everybody just thinks they can get online and go get a handbook. And I walk in and people have a 100-page handbook. And if I put it in front of an HR rep, you know, somebody that knows HR compliance, they'll tear that down to about 15 pages.
Yep.
Because people go and just download everything out of an HR handbook, you know, from a dummy file.
Yes. Oh yeah.
They're setting themselves up for failure because they're putting stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there, but they don't know any better. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we stay in our lane of benefits only when it comes to HR.
And I'm in the same role because, you know, we stay in our lane as well in payroll, but we touch so many other things that we don't technically do. And I have found in my business development role, I have to be that expert in who's good at all this other stuff and that's part of my service. And I don't think my clients appreciate how well I've researched this and how I vet people who are good at what they do and make sure those are the people that I bring to the table, you know, for them to help them with those things. But then also understanding, like, you know, not many payroll people really dove into understanding how my system talks to carriers versus how Navigator talks to carriers. And we've had this conversation, like, you know, my whole HCM system isn't always the best fit for a company with 20 employees. However, sometimes if I do have a company with 150, they want an HCM. We can still work with you as the broker to shop all those different carriers for them, but that might be where the HCM piece comes in. So it's complicated, but you got to know your market. So
and I would add to that too. You know, don't be pound or don't trip over a dollar to save a penny. Is that what it is?
I like that.
You know, so I know there's costs up front to set up systems that you and I employ, but what I tell employers is that cost today will save you a lot tomorrow.
Yep.
You know, so spend a little bit extra now to set up the proper systems.
Yep.
So you're not in trouble later going, oh man, now I got to go back and.
New small business softwares, even more than the big enterprise software stuff, it's like nobody ever appreciates it as you're going through it. Like we can't go get testimonials for some of our clients because it is a little bit to learn it. But then what's common with all of them is once they're 2 or 3 years in, you go to them, they can't imagine going back to how they did it before. Oh, yeah. And it's like, I wish people in the small business sector would appreciate that is as they move stuff off these paper processes. And, you know, like I see that with, you know, simple stuff in payroll, like PTO and vacation tracking. You did it 20 years on spreadsheets. Now you move it into my system. And then, you know, and getting the balances and everything perfect in the transition can be a little tedious, but man, once that's been rolling for 5 years, you never want to go back to doing it on that spreadsheet again. Yep. Same thing with you. Back to your history, and I ask all my guests this question because it is the PayDay Podcast. What was your first ever payroll job? Not your first little under the table thing, your first job where you got a paycheck where they likely took out Social Security, Medicare tax. Do you remember?
I do. So it was actually, I was 15 and a half at Little Caesars Pizza.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Little Caesars.
Little Caesars.
We both have that in common. We both came out of food service. Yeah. What do you remember what year roughly that was? Maybe what you made?
Oh man, I was a sophomore in high school. So that would have been 92, 93. Back then it was probably $5, $5.25 an hour. I mean, it's amazing where we gone from $5.25 minimum wage to 17, but yeah. Pizza
places is I hear pretty tough. I worked in food service. Yeah. I never did do the pizza place stint. Did you have the crust already formed at Little Caesars, or did you have to?
So when we were 18, you can't touch the crust machine till you're 18, or the dough machine.
Oh.
So we would come in and all the dough would be formed in the pans. And so we would just grab them from the pans and then go from dough up.
Okay.
So, yep.
Is there any lessons from like any of your managers or anything, even that job or your first couple jobs, that you think helps you in what you do today?
Yeah, I especially being in the food service, I mean, people rely on you to make sure their stuff's right. So paying attention to detail, you want pepperoni? Do you want sausage? Back then it was the pizza. So you get 2 pizzas at once.
Yes, yeah.
Now at Little Caesar's gone a single pizza. So, making sure that one pizza's done right way and the other one's the other way.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of the 2 pizzas every time you ordered.
So we ship out 2, packages this big. We come in and walk out with 2 pizzas. So just the details and then taking pride.
Yes.
Can you make a pizza in 30? Absolutely. But then does it look sloppy? Does the tomato sauce fit in the ring? Does the cheese fit in the ring? Do you put enough pepperonis in the right place? Just the little details like that matter even now as we're professionals. I still harp on the little details. Do we and in our world, their details are important.
Yes.
You miss a detail, that could cost.
And it's communication about detail.
Huge, yeah.
Like I can tell when somebody didn't work in food service and they don't talk to the clients in the right way, and you have to kind of coach them like, this is what they need. Speak to what they just asked for.
So saying that, man, that's huge because back then we didn't have cell phones, obviously, text, no internet. So everything came away at a wall of four phones. That's how our delivery, that's how we. So being on the phone, how do you handle the phone as 4 phones are ringing? You're taking orders and being polite and communicating and using those. I mean, how many people can talk on a phone these days, let alone handle 3 or 4 of them?
Yep.
So that's when you mentioned that was huge.
You got to get communication cheat codes. Like you learn to ask these little questions, and if they say something, to ask this because you had one where it creates more work if you don't figure out what they want in the long run. And I think that applies to business. I know for me though, from food service, when I got into corporate, I still communicated very much like in the restaurant industry, and that did not do me well to talk to my operational team in the same way I would talk to like the line cooks I worked with in the restaurant industry. So it took me some adjusting. That's what I always tell people, like folks with food service experience can be awesome hires, but they might need a little bit of, there could be a little rough around the edges, and they might just need a little bit of coaching on how to communicate in that professional environment. But man, do they care about the client and getting it right with the client and avoiding making those mistakes. Another detail for me that, in my sales career, and I bring this up on the podcast, was I talk a lot about football and how like I was never really part of a successful football team, not since 5th grade. So I played a lot and I was on a lot of losing teams, but I think all that losing helped me develop this unemotional response to not getting deals. I can move on and keep working. So if I remember, were you more into another sport besides?
No, I was a wrestler and football player.
You're a wrestler and football player. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So were you good? Did you have a lot of success in those sports?
We did. Yeah.
You did. Okay. And you're still killing it and as a broker too. So, I always like to ask people on my podcast this question about football. So football, you played football. What position did you personally play?
I played receiver and defensive back.
Receiver and defensive back. Okay. So I made this analogy where I felt like in my role in payroll, I felt like I'm still like an offensive lineman because we don't get celebrated. That's the position I feel like I play. So imagine a business is a football team. If you could align what the health broker is to that business as a position on a football team, defense, offense, or special teams, what position would you?
So I would equate us to a middle linebacker.
Okay.
You got to be shedding. You got to have your head on a swivel.
A lot of things are coming. I like that. Yeah.
You're shedding the offensive lineman coming.
I used to block middle linebacker.
There you go.
That was my skill set as a center. So yeah.
So we're always shedding that block. You got a lot of things coming at you, whether it be other brokers coming in with different information or different plan types coming in and the new great idea.
I love that. Yeah. Because health brokers, even more than payroll, like you guys are always just trying to put something in somebody's head that they're not doing, and that's the next big thing.
Yes.
So that makes a lot of sense.
So, yeah.
I love that analogy of the middle linebacker as the health broker. So if your business needs a really solid defensive person to help make them successful so that their employees are happy with their benefit programs, I highly recommend they go talk to Jamie over at Saxon.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, we'd love to talk to him.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
But it's a payday. Come up on a lick. That's a payday.